So, hello, people. Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy 420. And we're talking Giants Part Deux. This is from the first time we're talking about Giants. And when we talk about Giants, we talk about Giants that lived here. And I wanted to start off the show where actually, Mike, before there was God, wasn't the Giants roaming the earth before God?
No,
Wasn't what that wasn't like in the when you read Greek mythology, the Titans were here, and like Zeus
that
had to
was
get rid of the Titans.
that's not before Genesis.
That's
That's
not
not
so.
that.
The Greek mythology is not before Genesis,
No, the Greek mythology is obviously after Genesis.
because you know what? It's also weren't there Leviathan around before God?
There's nothing around before God. God made the earth and all the creatures, and then He made
Was
man, and then the fallen angels happened.
Yeah, because I
Okay,
always heard of Leviathan that were creatures that God actually feared.
Leviathan is just like a great beast.
Yeah,
Okay, it has different meanings in different cultures. Uh, that's a little bit different. Okay, because when you're talking about with giants, you're talking about the fallen angels. Okay, the Nephilim, them intermingling, having sex with human women, and creating these creatures and these monsters. Now, there may have been giant beasts around at that time. I mean, we know, look, we know by fossil records that there were giant woolly mammoths, giant mastodons, saber-toothed tigers,
yeah.
big creatures like that at the time of man. Now, what we all think and what we've been told for many, many decades is that that was like cavemen that were dealing with that. Primitive cavemen. Not, I believe that there's a lot of evidence that shows that that's false. See, the carbon dating and stuff that we go by, people think it's gospel and it's 100% accurate. It's not. Okay, and I think that once you kind of get rid of that idea that something is exactly 20,000 years old and that's all it could be, and you start to think that there might have been more ancient civilizations prior to what we know of. Because remember what I said the last episode, ancient Egypt, for instance, all of a sudden, with no warning, has a complicated hieroglyphic language. Where'd that come from? Okay, because they had no prior culture before that with a written language. And then they come up with this hieroglyphic language that to this day we don't totally understand.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a lot of
now,
symbols and stuff that we still have no idea what the hell it mean. And we might never
right,
know.
right, right. And I believe, and you might say, well, what does this have to do with giants? Well, it does, because they found hieroglyphic symbols, and I'm going to talk about it in one of the examples today.
In South
Uh,
America also.
well, right, and right in South America, but with giants in particular, they have found burial grounds, mounds in America with giant skeletons inside, 7, 8 feet tall. Okay, there's even a couple that might be even been bigger, but some of these had like symbols on them. Okay, like a it was carved into stone over the body, like a sarcophagus. Okay, almost what you'd see in Egypt. Okay, but made out of stone, not gold or anything like that. But with hieroglyphic like symbols on them. So what does all that tie in? Well, the point of these shows that we've been doing is I'm trying to explain that these fallen angels gave us technology, or gave these ancient civilizations some kind of technology that probably a lot of it's been lost. We don't know it anymore. Okay. And also, what they did teach us, and that did carry on, of course, is, if you read the book of Enoch and in some Hebrew texts, they talk about how the fallen angels taught people how to make weapons. Okay, we didn't know how to do that.
No.
Okay, so they taught us warfare.
That's
Okay, and
incredible.
that's
Mike, let me
we
ask
all,
you a
we all know
question.
that stayed on.
Because, like, just like fallen angel, what do you think of some of the Greek gods that came down and supposedly made
No,
love to
I
humans
think
too?
yeah, I mean, I think that is tied in, okay,
Yeah.
because all of these ancient cultures, whether it's uh, ancient Sumeria, ancient Egypt, the Native Americans have legends about people coming down from the sky, okay, and teaching them things, okay. Now, you know, is that the fallen angels? I kind of think it is. Now you might say, is it angels? Is it people? What we think of an angel, or is it an alien in a spaceship? Is it? That's where people go different ways, and a lot. I think it's kind of like a combination in a way. Okay, I don't. I kind of believe both.
So
Okay,
what happened to because Lucifer was a fallen angel,
yeah.
right?
Well, yes, of course. He was the most he was the most
did he
beautiful.
have kids? Did he have kids also? Did he ever made it with
Well, I think I mean I think if you follow the religious texts when it comes to Lucifer, he was the most he was an archangel first of all,
yeah.
which means he was just as powerful as the archangel Michael, the archangel Raphael, all these,
But those are
Uriel.
warrior angels, remember? Those are
Well,
not angels, those
Lucifer,
are angels that protect us of God.
right? Okay, they're sons of God.
Yeah.
Okay, and Lucifer was supposedly the most grand, beautiful one. Okay, and he got jealous of God and started a war in heaven, and because he wanted to kind of be like God. Okay, it's funny when people the my name Michael, okay, and the archangel Michael. The word Michael in Hebrew is not it's not a word, it's a sentence. It means it's asking a question. It's who is like God. That's what that means. Michael means who is like God,
Wow.
because it's a response to like Lucifer saying, I'm going to be just like God, and who could be like God? Okay, that's what that means. And you know, Lucifer, if you go by the religious texts, he was defeated by the archangel Michael finally and cast into hell, and he waits until the end of times to come out. Does he mess with people in the meantime? Well, yeah, okay, he's got the power to do that from hell, but he's not here. He's in hell. Okay, so the demons are the ones that are here. Okay, now the demons are the fallen angels. Okay, and they are to blame for giving people the power to make warfare, the technology to do that. Okay, now
Mike, check this out. Could these fallen angels were the remainders of Lucifer's army that they just say you're kicked out of heaven and cast into earth?
yeah, I believe so. Yeah, all right. I mean, there's a lot of texts that get into that. Um, you know, and again, where does giants fit in with this?
Yeah.
Well, they are the offspring of these creatures with women. Okay, and could they have been titans? Probably. Okay, when you watch movies like Clash of the Titans, right? Great movie. Okay, I like the original better than the remake, but it deals with these like Greek mythological creatures, and they are kind of almost like half human, half something else. Okay, like remember the Minotaur was like half man, half bull.
Yeah.
He had a bull head,
Yeah.
horns. Okay, and he lived on Crete, and everybody had to fight him. Okay, and I think there was more than one Minotaur. You got to wonder, like, what is this based on? Is it just tall tales? But why would you make up something like that? Why would you just who comes up with like, oh, I'm going to make a story about a half man with a bull head? No, it has to be based on kind of something that you saw or thought you saw. I don't know. I think that a lot of these creatures in mythology are based on things, and then you have like the gods, Zeus,
Remember,
Hera.
these people also took a lot of peyote.
Well, yeah, they were getting lumped up. A lot of wine.
You're out there in the desert. What the hell is that?
A lot of, yeah. I mean, there's definitely they were getting lumped up. I mean, when the longest you would live would be 30 years old in those days. You think you're going to have a good time. But I want to talk about where we left off in the last episode.
Yeah.
And that was with that Abraham Lincoln quote about giants. Okay. Yeah. And I want to give some examples, some things that he himself may have even been aware of. Now, what am I talking about? Just to reiterate from last week, Lincoln was on the campaign trail and ended up, this is in 1850, ended up this was in the early parts of his political career. And he was campaigning for somebody in the Whig Party. And he ended up in the Niagara Falls area, observed the falls, was blown away by the beauty of it, and wrote a speech which he never gave. And there's a portion of it here I'm going to read again. And it talks about giants, okay? And it goes like this. When this is the excerpt part, it's a big speech, but he never gave it. It's just stayed in his notes. But
I wonder why he never gave it.
It just never, I guess, I don't know. I guess things changed for him, but he kept it. He wrote it. It's in his notes. It says, and this is the excerpt about the giants. When Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led Israel through the Red Sea, nay, even Adam first came from the hand of his maker, then as now, Niagara was roaring here. The eyes of that species of extinct giants, whose bones fill the mounds of America, have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. Contemporary with the whole race of men and older than the first man, Niagara is strong and fresh today as 10,000 years ago. The mammoth and the mastodon, now so long dead that fragments of their monstrous bones alone testify that they ever lived, have gazed on Niagara. In that long time, never still for a single moment, never dried, never froze, never slept, never tested. Now, he's obviously talking in that one sentence, okay, about giants. Some people think he's really talking about woolly mammoths and mastodons, but what gives it away is, when he says the eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America. In America, going back to when centuries before we were even a country, okay, the colonists, the Spanish, the English, the Dutch, they would find these mounds. Okay, at first they found them in upstate New York, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. Once New York was probably one of the first places because we were, that was settled first. And then we slowly started going west. Okay. But, they would find these mounds. They were usually in Indian areas, American Indian areas. They sometimes had Indian buried with them, but there would be bones of giants, people that were 7-8 feet tall, even bigger. Their heads sometimes the skulls had two sets of jaws, an upper and a lower, two sets, an inner and an outer. Okay. So big that the skull would fit over the skull of an irregular American Indian. If it was buried in the same place, they could just place it right over it. These are well documented. This is not 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 cases. No, these are thousands of them. And the consensus is that the giants probably had the burial grounds there before, and the Indians may have continued using them after, or there was a point when these two cultures were together. We know that because a lot of the Indian legends have stories of fighting giants,
Yeah.
giants raiding, fighting their tribes, killing, eating them, eating them. They were cannibals. Okay,
Yeah, so
and
they had the two set of teeth.
maybe they needed an extra set. I don't know. Okay, some of them had 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. Okay, there's even some cases I'm going to talk about this where they had 4 fingers. Okay, so one example of something like this, and this is one of the best examples of a giant, very huge giant. This one is 12 feet. Okay, in Lompoc Rancho, California, in 1819, a 12-foot skeleton was unearthed. Okay, was dug up. Now, soldiers were digging a pit for a powder magazine, and they ended up digging through the dirt, and they came across this cemented layer of gravel. So they dug through it, not expecting to see that. They dug through it, and they found a 12-foot sarcophagus buried there. The grave also had surrounded inside of it carved shells, huge stone axes, 2 spears, and thin sheets of what was called porphyry. And porphyry is a purple mineral that has a little bit of quartz in it, okay? And it covered the skeleton in the sarcophagus. I guess a way to preserve it somewhat. I don't know, okay? These sheets of porphyry had these strange, unknown hieroglyphic type symbols on them. Okay, so the soldiers were concerned about this, so they contacted a local Indian tribe, and the Indians told them that they were actually, this was in California, okay, that they were actually a displaced Indian tribe from the Ohio Valley that had moved out there. Okay, the legend goes is that the Indians that were telling them this had to go into a trance before they could explain it to them. Okay, so they maybe took peyote. I don't know. They went into a trance and basically told them this is our ancestors, whatever, from the Ohio Valley. So the soldiers, thinking that this was very significant, decided to just bury it back. Okay. Now, there was also something in 1847. And again, this first one, the 1819, 12-foot skeleton. And this is something that Lincoln might have heard of. All right. It was his time. Okay. Here's another one from 1847. There was a book or a publication written by a guy named Henry R. Schoolcraft, and it was called The Notes on the Iroquois Indians. This took place in Auburn, New York, upstate. Skeletons were found near Fort Hill and its vicinity. A humerus bone, which is your leg bone, and a shoulder bone showed the living giant had to be at least a third taller than the average man.
Damn.
So you're talking 2 feet taller than the average man. Okay. Documented. This is documented stuff in publications. There was another one, 1885 in Michigan. Memorials of a Half Century. That was the name of that publication. The best example of mounds were on the shores of the Grand River, 3 miles south of Grand Rapids, Michigan. 6 mounds were opened in 1874. Several skeletons were found. One was over 7 feet tall, sitting in a posture and faced at different points. What they find in a lot of these mounds is that these skeletons, they're buried.
Still sitting up?
They're buried in sitting positions. Okay? They're buried in sitting positions, and they face different directions like the spoke of a wheel. Okay? So you might have, like, let's say you bury 4 people. You bury one facing north, facing south, facing east and west. Okay? And that is a significant thing because it shows that there's a belief and there's a this is a religious thing. They could be sun worshipers.
Yeah.
You know, you might bury somebody towards the east because the sun rises that way, sets in the west, like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, again, these are mounds. So let's say you're in a field and you see this mound. I mean, it's like why is that there? It looks like something somebody made.
Yeah.
They would dig into it, and they would find these. They're inside. They're in there, and they're sitting up. Okay, and they might if there's more than one, they might be facing different directions, like the spokes of a wheel. Sometimes they would find them lying down too, not always sitting.
Yeah.
Okay, but
I think the one that they found sitting were maybe ones that died and they just couldn't move, and they just built on top of them.
No, I think they sit them there on purpose. I think it's got to be. It's got to be. You wouldn't bury somebody sitting up unless it meant something to do that.
I think that's weird. They're sitting up there.
It is weird, but it's something that they found on many times. Now, then also in Michigan, there was a publication called the American Antiquarian, and this was from volume 12, number 1, published January 1890. A guy named Mr. Bates and 2 friends made an excavation in a vacant lot located within the area of an old cemetery. They came upon a curious and interesting burial spot at a depth of 2 feet. They found this. 5 skulls were found lying in a circle facing the center. Okay, so like the spokes of a wheel, 5 skulls facing that way. Okay.
Wow.
Within the circle were ashes and charcoal, which shows evidence of a fire, but the bones were not all burned. On the skulls, 2 had double teeth in front, and Mr. Bates also said that a third may have had that also. So out of the 5, they may have had at least 3 with double sets. Yeah.
Mike, it's funny that you talk about because they were saying, I think in the book of
Enoch.
Neon, the book of Neon, they talk about giants drinking and devouring and killing humans.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, they were like watchers, but then they just started killing them and and this is like it's in that book. It's in the Quran. It's like a different book about giants just devouring and eating humans.
Yeah. I'm not positive about giants being in the Quran. It could be. Okay.
There's verses of them.
Is there verses about that? I wasn't aware of that. All right, I got to look into that. But keep in mind, Book of Enoch, old world. Okay, Middle East. Okay, maybe North Africa, places like that they knew about. They knew there were giants there. This is in North America. This is in our backyard. How'd they get over here? Okay, or I mean, there's different theories. What if they actually started here and went the other way? Nobody really knows what came first.
Wow.
Okay, did they really? Obviously, because we think the Bible is the oldest form of information. Maybe that's not true. Maybe before the Bible was written, maybe there were giants in North America roaming around. We don't know. Okay. And one thing you got to remember with the Bible is that the first few chapters of the Bible, which is really the Hebrew Bible, okay, like what they call the Torah, okay, but we call it Genesis, Deuteronomy, all that. That was all written by Moses. and it came later.
Mm.
Okay, so and there's thousands of years in between, so we don't know. They were slave. The Jews were slaves in Egypt for a long, long, long time before Moses took them out, and then he wrote Genesis. So what did they have before that? Well, they had writings, but it wasn't put together. Okay, Abraham didn't have. Abraham, who's considered the father of the Jews, didn't have a book of Genesis to go by. What did he teach? Well, he taught that there's one God and all that. But when cultures believed in many gods.
So
okay,
where did the Dead Sea Scrolls come from?
Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls was something that was discovered, in the early, I think, 20th century. They are actual scrolls, papyrus scrolls of some stuff that we already knew. Okay, they did find excerpts of the Book of Enoch that went back many, many more centuries than we thought it did. So, the Book of Enoch is something that was taught for centuries before Christ, and Christ himself, read the Book of Enoch. You've heard of the expression "the Son of Man."
Yeah.
Jesus would say, "I'm the Son of Man."
Yeah.
That's an expression from the Book of Enoch. It's all over that. Okay, so some people say the Book of Enoch is kind of like it predicts the coming of Christ. It's possible, okay, but because of that expression, but it's also very possible that Christ was familiar with the book and used that word. That's that expression, okay. But again, we don't know where I believe the fallen angels had to go everywhere. Okay, they didn't just go to civilization that we know of was happening, like ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, Babylon, places like that. They didn't just go there. They went. I believe that there were other civilizations, probably older, in other parts of the world. And that's when you get into the whole like Atlantis thing, and what I was talking about last week about Antarctica, how that could be Atlantis, because there's evidence that it existed 2,000 miles north than where it is now. And because of what's called earth crust displacement, it moved, south to colder environments. But there was part of Antarctica that had to have a tropical climate, because they know that, because they found in the evidence of tropical plants and trees and stuff in Antarctica. So they know that part of the world, and it couldn't have been that there was those trees growing down there. It had to be the continent moved. You couldn't have trees growing there because it'd be too cold.
I still find that fascinating. What's another weird thing? Why they call these fallen angels watcher? Why do they mean by watcher? Were they here just to observe and then they started fucking around with humans? Is that what it was? They were here to watch?
Exactly.
And then they just...
In the Book of Enoch, excuse me, in the Book of Enoch, it explains that there's one book called Book of Watchers, and it explains how the angels were supposed to be watching over mankind. That was their job. But some of them got jealous, and some of them fell in love with the women. They were beautiful. They never saw anything like that before, and started messing with them. And they it's like having the wolves watch the sheep,
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's and some of them gave birth to these creatures, and some of them would end up being giants. Some of them would end up being deformed creatures, maybe half animal, half human, which is where you get the Greek mythology stuff from. Okay, maybe other things that we don't know. Okay, now, one thing I want to mention here is that, and I kind of mentioned it before, so there's many legends among the Native Americans regarding the giants, fighting them, and all that. And there's many legends that also place these giants at the time of woolly mammoths, mastodons, and saber-toothed tigers. Okay, so these same legends and among the Native Americans sometimes puts these creatures, these giants, as gods. Okay, and when I say Native Americans, I'm not just talking about, the tribes we know, Sioux, Iroquois, Cherokee. That I'm talking about what became South American Indians also. Okay, they have legends. The Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, they all had legends. The area now known as Peru, the area now known as Ecuador. And I want to get into this more next week. Okay, the next show. I think we're going to do at least 3 or 4 shows on this. Okay.
Yeah, the South American stuff is fascinating. Like
yeah. I
stuff
want
that
to
we're
get into
fighting
that.
there.
I want to get into that more next week. Because you get into those like crop circles that you can only see from the air.
I think it's
What?
another
Yeah,
fascinating thing.
what is that? And also they have legends. Getting into the ancient civilization side of it, they have legends of the gods called Viracocha. Okay, and this is all over South America. Viracocha gave them their culture, gave them their language, gave them their society. They taught them to not be, primitive. Okay, some of these people were even cannibals. They gave them civilization.
Yeah, I think they were definitely, maybe that's where they had the virgin sacrifice. Put the virgin there, and the fucking giant came and devoured her. All right, I'll take care of you guys. I'll teach you something.
What I'm saying is not just giants. I'm talking about the people that would become Indians that we know in South America. Early in their history, they were cannibals. Okay, Viracocha came along, taught them not to do that. Now, when people say, "Well, what did Viracocha look like?" Now, picture what an Inca looked like, or an Aztec looked like, right? South American people have that particular look.
Yeah.
And Viracocha was a white guy with long red hair, with powers.
You know what the problem is? This guy has appeared a few times in different places. That's the thing that's scary too about him.
Yeah, and who is that?
Yeah.
Okay, and what is it? Just one? Is there more than one? How if you had never seen a white person before? Okay, that would be like a god to you, right?
Yeah.
Especially if he could do things that you never saw. Okay, so that's why I get into I like the whole idea of the ancient civilizations that we know of. There were civilizations older that taught them, and things have been lost in time. Technology has been lost. Remember we talked about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
The power behind that. Moses said to build. Well, God told him to build this ark. It had to be 40 cubits. I forget the exact dimensions. Okay. It had to be a certain size, made from a certain wood, covered in a certain gold, in a certain design. And after they were taken out of Egypt and settled in Israel, the ark was used in battle. Okay. And there's, the ark knocked down the walls of Jericho, the city of Jericho. Okay. There's legends of that. How did that happen? How could an ark, just bringing the ark out, how could that do that? Well, I believe it had some kind of power.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a power that if you read in the Bible, it says that Moses, because he grew up in Egypt as a prince, even though he was a Jew. You know the story. So,
Yeah.
the Ten Commandments. So,
Yeah.
he grew up an Egyptian, and he knew. I think I'm going to paraphrase, but it does say in the Bible that he knew all the science of ancient Egypt. Okay, and I think that when it comes to ancient Egypt and older civilizations, I think a lot of that stuff is lost. We don't know. How the fuck did they build the pyramids?
Yeah.
Okay, there had to be. There's no way that was done by slaves. Everybody's just like, oh yeah, Jewish slaves. No, it was too impossible, too hard to do. I mean, they look at the way these stones were cut,
Dude,
the precision.
yeah, but Mike, just think about the Noah's Ark. To build art to be in water for that long, how much
Well, yeah, I mean,
technology?
if the story I know Noah's Ark is he built the ark and he covered it in pitch, and pitch is like tar.
I know, but I mean, how
I
did
know,
he
but then
know?
but how did he
It's
know how to
still
do it?
fascinating.
Yeah, how did he know how to do it? There
How
had
do
to
you know
be
how to do it? Put this thing together.
there
Do
had to
that. Like,
be a
think
science. There
about
had to
that.
be a science. There had to be a science that we don't know about anymore. It's been lost, and this is not a strange thing in history, because you heard of the Dark Ages, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the reason they call it the Dark Ages is because there was like no growth of technology, no history was lost. We don't know exactly what happened. There's stuff that we had to relearn in the Renaissance times that was known in the ancient world. Okay, lost in the Dark Ages because there was a plague and all these things happened. Warfare, quarter of the population of the world dead in the plague. Then when the Renaissance happened and they started to, question things again, science was being worked on again. We had to relearn this stuff. A lot of the mathematics that came out in the last, 500 years, 400 years, is based on stuff that the ancient Egyptians, we're just finding out now, kind of knew. They kind of knew this stuff. Maybe not exactly. Okay. Like the equation of pi, 3.14. Okay. We figured out pi, but there's evidence that the Egyptians knew about pi because there's certain dimensions, like in the great pyramid in Giza, that equal pi. How the fuck did they know that? How'd they have that geometry? How'd they have that technology? And again, just you don't even have to look at the math. Math is beyond most of us. It's beyond me. Okay, but just look at the fact that they built these pyramids and they built them with such precision. The stones were cut so perfectly down to
science.
a fraction of an inch. Okay, that they could all fit perfectly without anything in between them, just fit. How could you do that? They didn't have diamond cutters back then and all. How'd they do it? Okay, how'd they do that? And there's examples of this all over the world. Okay, there's the Lalibela stone churches in Ethiopia. There's the Egyptian pyramids. There's the South American pyramids. I just saw something that they found pyramids below the Azores Islands, which is, I think that's it's in the Atlantic, close to Europe. If I'm right, I think so. They found pyramids there that under the water.
Yeah.
Okay. They say there's pyramids under the Bermuda Triangle. Okay. Now that would explain a lot. Okay. And obviously these pyramids were not built underwater. There was no water when they built it.
No, there was probably just the sea level just went up after a
It
while.
was the sea level, right? Now, that's when you get into the story of the Great Flood and how did that happen? Exactly when did it happen? We have an idea, okay? Because there's all legends of great floods in every culture. Okay. We don't know exactly when it happened, but it ties in with all this. And, when you're talking about the Atlantic Ocean, also, it goes back to what I said about Antarctica being 2,000 miles more to the north than we know now. So you could have had a landmass right there, North Africa, between North Africa and South America. You could have had a landmass right there, okay, and that slipped to the south, okay, but there was an ancient civilization right there. Now, wouldn't that make sense for Viracocha to come from there?
Yeah.
All right, because South America is right there to the west. Africa's to the east. Maybe this Viracocha people, okay, or person, probably a culture, okay, taught the Egyptians what's up. Because,
He's
like I said,
the one that taught them how to write and stuff like that.
Yeah, and science and mathematics.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get back for a minute, and this kind of talks about what I'm saying here too. That American Antiquarian publication from 1880, Volume 3 in 1880. A skeleton which is reported to have been of enormous dimensions was found in a clay coffin with a sandstone slab containing hieroglyphics during mound explorations by Dr. Everhart near Zanesville, Ohio. A mound near Toledo, Ohio, held 20 skeletons, seated and facing all to the east, with jaws and teeth twice as large as present-day people, and beside each was a large bowl with curiously written hieroglyphic figures on it.
Wow.
Okay, in Ohio in 1880. This was published in the American Antiquarian. And finally, I want to talk about this thing, which I found fascinating. They have found skeletons with horns on their heads. Okay. Now, again, this I think would be the creatures, the Nephilim creatures, okay, or the Nephilim offspring. All right. Medford, Massachusetts in 1879. This was reported in the Arizona Sentinel newspaper. A human skull with two horns on its head was found 45 feet below Wellington Station. This was in Medford, Massachusetts. In Pennsylvania, a place called Tioga Point. This was in the 1880s. 68 skeletons were found. The smallest was 7 feet tall. Smallest.
Wow.
Okay. Some had horns or horn buds, little buds on their skulls. The specimens were sent to the American Investigating Museum in Philadelphia, where they were lost.
They were lost?
Lost. Yes. Conveniently. Okay.
There might have been like the first. There might have been like freaking manatards or something.
What? There's another story too. I think in the early 20th century, I think it was in Massachusetts, where a bunch of kids found a skull with horns on it, and they ran around with the skull saying that they found the devil. Okay, because it would look like the devil. Okay, but a museum losing 68 skeletons, of which many of them had horns on their heads. I mean, losing them. Okay, no. Okay, and this is part of the whole giant legacy. Is whenever these museums, especially the Smithsonian, okay, who the early days of the Smithsonian, they were buying up, gobbling up these specimens of giants, okay, and they pay outrageous money for them. If you ask them now where they are, they don't know.
They hide that shit.
Of course, they're in the basement. Okay, they're in the basement, hidden somewhere. Because if you actually started studying this shit, okay, and you could even get the Native Americans involved because it's part of their culture. Okay, because at least in North America it is, because we know in South America,
You know,
because they fought these creatures or they lived among them.
you know what's funny about the theory that you were talking about, that they were here already, giants were here already? When the Viking first got here, they really didn't attack because all they saw were natives and giants, and they were like, "There's no reason for us to even. Let's get the hell out of here."
There's stories, there's legends of Spanish colonists coming here. Okay, now where did the Spanish come from? Where did they go to? I should say they were mostly in the Caribbean, Florida. They owned for a while before we bought it from them. Okay, obviously through Mexico and up. Okay, they had eyewitness accounts of giants. This is probably the 1500s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the English and the Dutch later on also had eyewitness accounts of living. We're talking living, seeing something. Okay, what happened to these creatures? Probably got wiped out as time went on, as we grew as a nation. By the 1700s, 1800s, they were probably wiped out. The Indians have stories of them wiping them out because they had to, because
So
they
they
would
had to, because they were
kill
stronger,
them.
they were eating them, and they were
They would kill
scared.
them. Yeah, they would kill them, and they even ate them. Yeah, so they had to fight these people off their land. Okay. One last story here is interesting. Took place in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a story that was published in the Red Cloud Chief, September 8th, 1921. A petrified body found by miners is 6 feet 4 inches long. Embedded in its neck is a beautiful chain. They think it was a female. Okay. The fingers are perfect with long tapering nails. The hands are folded across the breast. On either side of his head are two horns, each about 4 inches long. Its weight was 450 pounds.
Wow.
And it's on exhibition in Helenwood, Tennessee, where it is being visited by thousands of people. This is 1921. All right. Now, to me, that, if thousands of people see something like that, there's something to it. You know what I'm saying? If it was a hoax, some one of those thousands of people would have said it's a hoax.
Oh yeah, of course. They would.
Okay.
They would. They would have figured.
And that doesn't mean that there wasn't hoaxes, Rob. Okay, because there were. Okay,
Yeah.
you go to a freak show. Coney Island had it. You look at remember they used to have like the two-headed pigs in the jaws and all that shit. It's like, that's fake. Okay, somehow they made that thing. Okay, but it's all this stuff is out there. It's been out there for over 200, 300, 400 years. Okay, especially in the 1800s when we started advancing as a nation. It's going west and publishing about these strange findings. It happened so much that the Smithsonian got involved. Okay, and remember, the Smithsonian is not a private museum. The Smithsonian is funded by the government. It's a government agency. Okay, and when you're dealing with the government, they're all going to tell you what they want you to know.
Yeah.
Now, what if instead of spending millions of dollars on bullshit, okay, that we do, sending it to countries that just fucking hate us, all that, okay, why don't they spend a cool $10 million, which is nothing, on studying this history, using Native Americans to help us, because they got those stories. Okay, these bones are somewhere. The Smithsonian has to have them. Okay, But the problem is if you start talking about this, it blows apart the whole theory of how we got here and who evolution and all that stuff that they want us to believe is the story of mankind. I think that that's, it's a tragedy that we can't even know about ourselves. Okay, but we should be allowed to know about ourselves.
So they hide it. They
Yeah,
bury it. They hide it. They burn it. They destroy the evidence.
yeah. Now, look at this cover of this book. And I got some of my information from this book. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, see that head?
Yeah.
That's the elongated skulls.
Yeah.
Okay, now they found these things all over South America, Peru. These skeleton heads that skull goes back like that. Okay, you look at that's in South America. You look at hieroglyphics from ancient Egypt. Don't they kind of look like they have elongated skulls sometimes?
Yeah.
Okay, you say, oh, that's a hat. Well, why do you need the hat to stick out that high?
But
There's something to it.
There was that guy, that Indiana Jones guy that goes into like the real life Indiana Jones guy. He will go into South America.
Yeah.
And he found some shit and he called the government and they came and they took it and they pretty much told him, yeah, it's the real deal, but don't tell people.
Don't tell people about it. This book that I just showed you, okay, is called The Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants in North America by a guy named Fritz Zimmerman. Okay. He also wrote this book called The Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley.
Wow.
Okay. Both of these books are just filled with documented stuff. Okay. Documented stuff here, dates and times and locations.
Wow.
And, of all these things. Can't all be false. Can't all be fake. And this is another book, if anybody's interested. I love this author, Graham Hancock. He wrote a great book called The Sign and the Seal, which is all about the Ark of the Covenant and the history of it and where it went in the world, where we think it is now, Ethiopia, okay, and other stuff about it, The Sign and the Seal. But this book he wrote here is called The Evidence of Earth's Lost Civilizations, Fingerprints of the Gods. Graham Hancock.
Oh yeah,
okay?
Fingerprints of the God. Yeah, that's another
great
book.
I've loved this book. I've read it like twice already, and I draw a lot of stuff that I'm talking about here from that. He's done a lot of research. This is a real Indiana Jones guy. Okay, he climbed the Great Pyramid, climbed it to the top. Okay, he had to bribe Egyptian guards to do it. Okay, but and he's been all over the world, from South America to Egypt to China, and all over the place. He's searching for these ancient civilizations, and
wow, man,
it's amazing. He's still out there doing it.
For so many people, there got to be something to so many people writing in so many books. There's definitely something out there. There's like a weird history that people just didn't want. We can't let people know these people existed because people will freak out.
Well, you know what? It's our history, okay? If they're softening on their positions on UFOs now, if you have the Navy out there saying, yeah, that's a UFO, okay?
Yeah, we see some.
Or there's now, the Pentagon now has an office actively looking at UFOs again. They haven't had that for 50 years.
Oh, no.
Okay. They have an office actively looking at them again. If they're softening their position on aliens, why not soften the position on humans? Okay. And say, hey, listen, there's a lot of reasons why we told you in the past how your history is, but it's not that way. Let's research it so we know. Okay, let's try to figure it out. And I think we can get somewhere. Look, in Antarctica, when Admiral Byrd went down there right after World War II, he left in a panic.
Yeah,
he was told to leave because they found stuff down there that they don't want people to know about. And if you remember, the Antarctica Treaty from the UN is the only treaty never broken. Okay, and all these countries signed on it and said they will not go down there to develop the area or anything like that.
I think
Okay,
that's amazing. They all
yeah,
signed it.
so many countries signed it. Okay, and why? Well, obviously there's some danger, or if not a danger, maybe not a danger, but like a sign, an example of a link that could tie so many different things
The
together.
missing link is there.
The missing link. I mean, I believe, again, I believe in my gut that there were civilizations older than what we know about, and we've lost what they are. We don't know what they were about, where they were located, who they were, what they looked like, what was their powers, their science, their technology. Okay, and I think some of those secrets can be found in Antarctica. I think.
Wow. Or they might have gave us some of those secrets, but again, the Dark Ages came and we lost the technology, we fucked it up, and we had to retrain ourselves how to do it again.
Yeah, and right. I mean, mankind has been too busy killing each other for thousands of years, and doesn't end. Still going on today. Yeah,
It will never end. We're savages.
I know.
I don't know. I wouldn't mind having that extra yard, have more teeth to eat my food more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could eat another steak.
And there's some people I would eat too. Clobber over the head and barbecue them. So, Mike, another fantastic show of conspiracy theory, man. We got this is show number 2 about giants, and the next show we're gonna get more deeper into South American giants, a little bit of the culture, places
we'll
that
talk.
they were
We're gonna talk more next week about Viracocha, okay, and South America. Not so much about giants. It'll come up, okay, but we'll talk about the ancient cultures there in South America that appeared out of nowhere, and how did that happen?
Yeah, those people that really came,
and one thing you got to remember. One thing you got to remember too is some of these places are way older than history says.
Wow.
That's the key, because I think that our dating technology isn't always right. That's a big problem. I think we rely too much on that carbon-14 dating. They have to come up with a better way, because it kind of would mean that, like, for instance, real quickly, like the Sphinx. Okay, there's some people that say it's only 10,000 years old, but that makes no sense to others, because if you look at the Sphinx, there's actual water damage on it, and there was no water in that region since about 25,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would mean that in ancient Egypt, before hieroglyphics and the pyramids and all that stuff, the Sphinx was there. But they never want to talk about that. Okay, how could that be? Who built that? What is it? What does it mean? Okay, but if it's got water damage on it, and they could tell from when something's eroded from rain, it has lines and stuff, and I don't know all the details, but there's a way to tell. Okay, and how could it be like that if it wasn't being hit with water? Well, there's no water in that area to do that, not since it was subtropical, and that was like 26,000 BC.
Yeah.
So
that's
anyway,
pretty fascinating. And then they got water damage.
Yeah.
And then the thing is like a man cat, right? Because it's built like
it's like a lion, a man's face
like
on a lion.
It's
we don't know what it means.
Too.
Yeah. So anyway, if you want to find me, you could find me on Instagram, Rocker Mike 212, Rocker Mike 212. You could find me on Clout Hub and MeWe on Rocker Mike. You can find me on Facebook under Rocco Mike, and also the Rock Show page, group page. We deal with a lot. Rock Show podcast group page on Facebook.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on anything Getting Lumped Up. Look at Getting Lumped Up on YouTube, Getting Lumped Up on Facebook, Getting Lumped Up on any social platform or podcast. We're on everywhere. We're on every single platform you could think of. Just look Getting Lumped Up. And if you want to reach me, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And just look up Getting Lumped Up and we'll pop up right there. Send me a message, drop me some line, or ask me about a show that's coming up or whatever else we're going to do.
Yep.
And like we always say, Mike, don't get drunk.
Get lumped up.
See you next week. And remember, smoke them if you got them.
Always good. Take care.